The name of this incident is Don Butler and the Dog Pack. This took place spring of 1998 at the Time Oil Terminal in St. John's, part of Portland, Oregon. Involved in it was Don Butler. He was a chemist for Time Oil, a black guy. Greg Icenoggle, one of the terminal operators, and myself, Jack Lynch, and I was a terminal operator there at that time. Don Butler was a chemist, worked at Time Oil. Not in St. John's, though. He was up there near Seattle, where the head office was. And he'd come down from time to time to take a look at our test equipment, the testing and sampling we were doing of products, to get data and to make sure we were doing it right and to hang out. Well, in reality, he was there to spy on us and see what's going on. The people in Seattle didn't have anyone down there, one of their own, that they could trust to give them the whole spiel. So Don would be down from time to time. And Don was fun to talk to. He'd worked at DuPont just like my father had, and he was pretty impressed with that sort of thing. And but he'd come down and see what's going on. And this one particular time he came down and we were waiting for a ship that was going to be offloading some diesel. We'd already sampled the tanks that it was going to go into. We'd already gauged all the tanks that it might go into, lined up the pipes, had the hoses ready, had the hooks ready for securing the ship. All that stuff was all done. The ship was late. All we could do was wait. Well, we didn't waste time waiting. Don Butler was there, and he'd never seen a sturgeon. Greg Icenoggle was the fisherman amongst us, and he always kept a deep sea fishing rod handy and some frozen smelt. So, while we're waiting at the dock, Greg got out the pole, baited it up, and on the river side of the dock, there was a nice deep depression there, probably from ships sitting there at anchor. Who knows? But that's where the sturgeon loved to go. Even today, you could go down there on that dock, put a line in, and you can get one. Easy. Greg put the line in. Shortly thereafter, he hooked one. He hooked it good. And he walked it along the edge of the dock, and the dock is about 20 feet above the water, down to the end, the downstream end, goes around that little edge, and walks it back on upstream on the shore side of the dock. Between the dock and the shore was a floating dock, a thin skim of concrete sitting on top of some foam is basically what it is. And that's where we would tie up our spill response boat and other things. My job was to stand by down there when Greg hooked the fish. Greg walk it around, I'd snag that fish, pull him up on top of the dock, and we had 2 marks that we'd scratch deeply into that concrete floating dock. I'd flop the fish up on top, the sturgeon usually, and if it was big enough, you could see right away. If it wasn't, I'd unhook it, roll it back in the water, and say goodbye. This one was the right size, and Don Butler's watching the whole thing. So I picked up that fish. I don't know, he was 40, 45 pounds, somewhere around there. He was a nice size. Picked him up, carried him on up to the pickup truck, and me and Greg and Don got in the front cab and drove back up to the terminal office. We were the only ones there on site because it was late afternoon. And Greg took our boom truck that has a big boom on it so we can pick up pipe or hoses and move them around, and extended the boom out, lowered down the line, and tied a rope around that sturgeon's tail and put the hook of the boom into that line and raised that sturgeon up. Well, that sturgeon wasn't dead right now. You could see, he was still moving his gills. And Butler sees all this, and he just can't believe it. His mouth's open. He's getting worried. He doesn't like that fish, I don't think. But Greg walks on over with a knife, sticks it into his poop hole, and cuts it right on down to where his gills are there, and out come his entrails. Greg pulls all that stuff out. Butler, I guess, expected that fish to just be dead right then and there. Who knows, maybe the fish was, but his gills were still working. 5 minutes later, Butler's eyes were rolling. He didn't want anything more to do with that devil fish. So that's the kind of guy that Don Butler was. He was nice, but things could spook him pretty good. Well, the next time Don Butler came down to visit us, he stopped by early in the afternoon, said he'll be by. He knows the ship's coming in. He'd like to know when. And we said, oh, that'll be about 7 o'clock or so. That's what we expect. He says, okay, well, I'll be there then. And Greg says, Don, come on in there. You watch out for that pack of dogs. We got a wild pack of dogs. Well, yeah, Time Oil had a wild pack of dogs. These were 5 or 6 maybe stray mutts that had been around. And if they even saw you from a quarter of a mile away, they'd take off. They didn't want to be around for anything. But we call them the wild dogs. So we set about to getting ready for that ship, knowing the Butler's probably going to come about an hour early. Greg had already planted the seed in Butler's brain that the wild dogs are out there. Butler had asked the foreman, Mike, if there were wild dogs, and Mike just offhand said, "Yeah, that's what we called them." Mike says, "Yeah." So the next seed was planted a little better for Don Butler. Well, Don comes sneaking around about an hour before we were going to be seeing that ship. I guess he thought he'd catch us doing something. And well, we saw him. You drive in from the far end of the terminal there along that road. One of us is always up on the tank watching out for the ship or gauging or sampling the tank or whatever. You're 50, 60 feet up in the air. You see everything. So I called down to Greg and said, "Hey, Butler's coming." And I climbed on down off the tank, went on down to the dock. I was done there. What Greg did was there's 5 or 6 of these 10-inch pipes that run parallel the length of the tank farm down to the dock, and they're up about 3 feet off the ground, but you can't see what's underneath them. There's a walkway next to them that goes down to the dock. You take that walkway if you want to sneak down to the dock instead of taking the road. Greg knew what Butler was going to do. He's coming to sneak in. Well, Greg got underneath that group of pipes, and he waited. He didn't have to wait too long. It's just starting to get a little bit dark out. Butler's walking down along the pipes, sneaking on up to catch us, and Greg's down under there. Butler gets close. Greg reaches out, and he grabs Butler right by the back of the calf, and he grabs on real tight and makes a dog-like sound like that. Butler jumped. He just about damn near jumped out of his pants. Jumped, screamed, cried, hollered, and ran back to the terminal. I saw it from the dock. I heard it from the dock. Greg came back, and we're just there just laughing our butts off. Don didn't come down to visit us that night. He went back to his hotel, came back the next morning. Didn't say anything, not a single word.